Welcome back to Let's Talk Careers. My name is Miss V, and I have another incredible guest. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Raidan AlSaqqaf, who is the United Nations resident economist for the United Arab Emirates. Welcome, Dr. Saqqaf. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me, Maria.
I'm so excited for you to be here, and I can almost hear all those aspiring economists right now hovering around their computers and thinking, how did he do it? What did he do? What did he take? What did he study? So, we're definitely going to get into the depth of what you're currently doing and how you got there. But before we do, I always take my guests back in time to when they were teenagers, around that time where young people are currently feeling really anxious about what they should be doing, moving themselves forward. I know that you were interested in geology and the earth sciences, but where did economics come into this?
Wow, it's actually a question of fate. I was born in Sana'a in Yemen. I'm Yemeni. And back in the day, when you're trying to explore what it is that they want to do, what are some role models, what are some of the experiences, you always ask, what else is out there? My fascination with geology is came from actually Sana'a being a very arid location. And everything you already see around you is mountains and rocks and whatnot. So there must be something more to it. And at the time, there was a television show actually called Faith and Science by Mustafa Mahmoud. And that show goes to different natural wonders. It's like a documentary series talking about all sorts of scientific whatnot. So I thought there must be something inside the bowels of those mountains and the stones somewhere. And I had conversations with my father. He encouraged me. He said, yeah, sure, you can. It could probably be a very promising area of work. Yeah, think about it. So I started in that line. And I was looking at what exactly, going a lot of hiking, looking at trips, making me have my collection of stones and earth rocks and whatnot, trying to make sense out of it. And that was my plan, actually. And I was planning, I even pinpointed a university in Spain where I want to go and study and costing it and learning some Spanish from a handbook. But then my father passed away as I was in high school. And I needed to realign my goals and lower my expectations. So after that incident, I needed to see what are the different options and what else opens the door. So that's the key issue, that why I deviated away from that area. I still think about it though. It could have been a very different scenario.
You know, I really appreciate that you brought this up, because just today I was in conversation with a group of young people in their final year at secondary school. And we were talking about life journeys. We were talking about their lifespan. And sometimes an individual will plan and plan and plan, and then life takes a different twist and a different turn. So I want to take you to something that you mentioned. You said that after your father's passing, you had to reconsider and be a little more realistic. What does that mean? Because I know that young people are always thinking, what am I supposed to do? What's the right thing to do? And we're, often telling them, just choose what feels right for you. It sounds to me like you were trying to make the right choice for the situation at hand, and I'm sure there's more to that. So I thought maybe you could talk to us a little more about what you meant and how you had to make those choices.
Well, yeah, I can't recall exactly what happened, but I do remember being desperate, thinking about what are the other options. There was Sana University. It had the program, but it was a terrible program because when I go to the university at the time, just finishing high school and just touring around, it didn't really meet my expectations. So my plan was to get a scholarship. I need to find a scholarship and I need to go somewhere. I studied English. I was well versed in English at the time, and I studied French. There was the Total Oil Company at the time, before becoming Total Energy. They had a scheme of scholarships, and you have to learn a little bit of French and then apply for that. So I applied for a wide variety of scholarships. I actually got a scholarship to pursue my bachelor degree in business management in India, paid for by the government of India through the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. So I owe to the government of India and the people of India actually my career, my trajectory in that sense. So it was an opportunity. It was on the table. It was there for the taking. I applied for many, many hundreds of opportunities and proposals here and there. Became a bit somewhat proficient. And that's what happened. So I found myself in Bangalore, South India, studying Bachelor of Business Management and learning an experience, a very fascinating and interesting experience at the time. Bangalore at the time was the IT hub of India. When I remember landing in the airport and then looking outside and I see at least 10 DHL airplanes, these huge cargo airplanes. And I was like, what's the story here? I mean, is this a logistics hub? And apparently it was all paperwork coming from Silicon Valley to be digitized in order capitalizing on the new IT revolution back at the end of last century. I'm that old. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking about, and I was looking at business opportunities in IT capital, and I've learned so much being 3 years in India, looking at that transformation. By the time I left Bangalore, it was already a different city, and that Bachelor of Business Management, actually, I think about it as a bachelor in life because it touches on everything from IT to marketing to finance to all sorts of areas. I actually did my bachelor thesis on small and medium enterprise marketing strategies, looking at the mushrooming of small businesses in India that are just taking all over the place, and learning how advertising is made and how all these different areas are coming through. And that's when I went back to Yemen after my bachelor. I established an advertising agency called Smart Advertising and Promotional Solutions. You're taking me back in memory lane, indeed. And it was a very fantastic experience because I also took up a journalism gig on the side. So I was doing my business, presenting myself as a journalist to meet important policymakers, business leaders, and whatnot. But then after concluding my journalistic interview, then I say, okay, this is my card. I also do this on the side, by the way. If you need a quotation, if you need an offer, if you need anything like that, just to make a hustle in a sense. After a year and a bit of doing that, I came across a second opportunity to pursue my master's. And this time it was courtesy of the government of Yemen. There was a program funded by the government of Yemen trying to find people who speak good English and have some kind of skills to help to pursue 1-year master's degree in different areas and build the human capital of the country. And I did my master's Master of Science in International Business at the University of Nottingham in Malaysia. That was the Malaysia campus. So I spent a bit of time in Southeast Asia, in Kuala Lumpur and KL. And it was also another eye-opening experience. When I came back after my master's, I took on my journalism career full-time, and I became an economic editor for a newspaper. And that was another eye-opening opportunity for me, working on journalism, capitalizing on my master's of international business with a minor in economics, and looking at different areas of relevance. So my bachelor was in business management. My master's was in business as well, with a minor of economics. But I kept asking these questions. So I was sent there to build human capital. Yes, I can get a better job. Yes, I can make better money because of that job. But then what is exactly the value of education? At the time, there was a national conversation around human capital and how do you make investments in Yemen to help Yemen, because Yemen is the least developed country and has a lot of poverty at the time. That was before the war. So it had some chronic development challenges. So the one asset the country has is its people. Well, a few years before that, the one asset the country had in my eyes was the rocks that I was looking at, in terms of trying to see what's inside these rocks, and some minerals, some gold, some whatever. But then I thought, okay, so maybe it's the people, not the rocks, which makes more sense in a way. And that's at the time when I applied for the University of Nottingham, UK, just wanted to pursue a PhD in economics. So I said, I want to ask this question. They say education and investing in people is the natural resource of the national value of the country. Let's have a closer look. Let's see if that actually works. Building on my research and my investigation, I started my career in international development. After 2.5 years or so of journalism, I joined the US Agency for International Development in Yemen. And after that, I joined the International Labour Organization and the UN system in different capacities, building my academic credential and as the PhD in economics, but also at the same time learning more about the practical aspects of what does it mean to be a development professional. What does it mean of somebody else looking at in terms of how can we accelerate the economic growth and well-being of people around the world, especially people like my Yemeni community, in terms of who need this help the most. How does this work? How can we make it work? So that's how I became an economist.
As you're telling me the story, I'm just hearing you were open and opportunities were arising that you were saying yes to, and always thinking, what else is there that could come? When I meet young people who are really rigid in their perspective of what they think they want to do you think that if you had that mindset of, no, I want to do this and I'm only going to do this, that you would have had all those opportunities? Or do you think that young people should be more open to and more flexible with the plans that they have to make?
Well, I think there is something to having a vision, and focusing on something that you feel you can make the most valuable contribution. But you can never be 100% sure. And you always have to keep knocking on doors and climbing walls and peeking in windows and seeing what else is out there. You have to have some kind of a drive within you that keeps propelling you forward. It might be the right direction, it might be the wrong direction, but it's somewhere. And the worst case scenario is that you can go back to where you were and then try with something else. I spent a lot of time in mountains upsetting my mom and my father at the time. Where were you all day? And you came dusty with all this dirt and whatnot. So having a collection of rocks that my mom keeps throwing out. Yeah, but those had value, I think, maybe.
So what do you think, as you remember those times, what do you think you brought with you into your career? I know they're very different, but I can almost hear some of those skills that you brought with you. What do you think that you've transferred from that younger you into your current role?
I think something that stayed with me, and I hear this repeatedly, is that the issue of perseverance. You have to keep going and going and trying and going and trying and knocking on doors and trying this and trying that, and just don't give up. Don't stay idle, and focus on what do you think might have some promise within it, even if it was difficult, even if it was problematic. I mean, for a Yemeni national to become the United Nations resident economist in the UAE, you have to be a superhero. You have to outcompete thousands of others who have a lot more prestigious degrees and experiences and whatnot. And then you have to succeed in doing that role so that you can keep the job that you have. So I think it's an issue of just throwing enough pain and suffering at it until you make it happen.
So what is the secret to that perseverance? Young people don't really understand what that's supposed to look like, and they're looking to their educators and their parents and their role models for the secret recipe. What would you say was it for you?
It's not a secret. It's an issue of, first of all, the key drive is that you have to want to do something. You can't take the horse to the water, but you can't force the horse to drink. So you need to want something. Today, there is a lot of online education opportunities. There's all this quantity of knowledge that's in your mobile phone. You just need to click for it. I mean, how come you haven't studied Wikipedia in detail? It's just click randomly on some random things so that you learn all sorts of issues. And it's an issue of wanting to learn and wanting to engage and wanting to better yourself and wanting to make a contribution to yourself and your society. So I think that's the starting point. You must want it. It will not be delivered to you. You must go out there and find it. And then you just have to keep going at it. You have hours in a day, just go at it and at it and at it. That's not a secret.
I love it. I love what you're saying. It totally resonates with me. And I want for young people to hear that there is no secret. It's just you have to want to keep going for it and keep trying. Now let's go to your education. I know that when I speak with parents, they're really concerned about their children getting the right education. Now you've done it all. You did your bachelor's, you've done a master's, you then went on to get your PhD. Is that the way that we should be encouraging all students to keep going, or was there an intention behind? I mean, you told us the story of your bachelor's and your master's, and you told us why you went for that PhD. But do you think that all young people should go down that education path? And if not, why did you?
There are two parts to the argument. The first part is, what exactly does education give you? My PhD thesis was actually measuring the microeconomic returns to investment in education. Is education worth your time and money? The answer is often no, it's not. Unless you're going to be like a doctor where you need some specialized expertise, or a lawyer or something where you have that role, then that's where the education is useful. But apart from that, it also serves a screening function in which having an education puts you in a better position in life, better position for academic pursuits, better opportunities. It opens doors for you. And one of the selfish motivations behind getting the PhD is that I wanted to be a doctor because of that screening function, coming with an Arab mentality as well. But also in the sense that it will enable me to access more opportunities and speak with authority on more topics. So that's one key interesting. Plus, I really wanted to pursue that research. I really want to come to a conclusion to say, this is how you build human capital. And these are the key elements that you need to be looking at. and so on. So that's one side of it, of how do you pursue education. The other part of it is that the drive that you have within you, does it take you to an education path? Does it take you to an experimentation path? Does it take you somewhere else? You might be an adventurer, a wandering spirit somewhere. I mean, that spirit should tell you which direction you want to go and what you want to do. And if education is right for you, then you go ahead and pursue it. And I also just want to add, because being a parent myself, having an 18-year-old, we put a lot of pressure on the screening function that you have to have to get your degree. Doesn't matter what kind of degree, you have to have somewhere else. And then I had an enlightening conversation with my son that helps me see beyond what I want to see for him, is that why a gap year is important. I want to go out there, do things, and have things happen to me, have that kind of life experience. I want to improve my street smarts so that I'm able to do more and contribute more and make a decision about which education matters and why am I pursuing it. That soul searching part of it. As parents, we tend to undermine that soul searching. So just go, this is what my parents did to me, so you must do it.
I completely agree. I think a focused gap year where a young person is really experimenting, but with intention, really understanding the experiences that they're taking on is the best life learning experience. But sometimes parents are afraid because they don't see that their children are focused or have any type of focus. When you look back at the younger you and you think, I was much younger and I needed to make decisions that would be for the betterment of my future. And also, I needed to be realistic in those choices. What do you think that was the greatest learning for you on this journey?
Tough question. I can't pinpoint something specific that was the greatest learning. But if I had to go back and revisit some of the practices that I was working on, I would say, for example, I should have invested more in my own financial literacy. I mean, maybe speaking as an economist now, as I'm in that capacity, but if you spend money, if you buy stuff, if you eat stuff, you are consuming, you are a part of the economic cycle. So you might as well have a closer look of what it is and how much money goes through you and how do you spend it, and the secrets of compounding interest and investing in the stock markets and all sorts of varieties, which is open to anybody who exists anywhere around the world. You can be wherever. You can go to Interactive Brokers or any other brokerage, just sign up and just start engaging in that cycle. So I think one key life lesson that I've learned, hopefully not too late, I would say, is financial literacy and understanding your personal financial goals in life. The other part of it is also your self-actualization. What kind of person do you want to be?
Mm.
Do you want to be a net consumer? Do you want to be someone who contributes specific things? Do you want to be an expert in a specific area? What are your contributions? Do you want to be someone who people open up to when they have their interviews and then helps guide thousands and millions of people on YouTube? Or do you want to be someone who's just focusing on having a shinier iPhone, whatever, or that kind of consumption lifestyle? What is your net contributing? So if you think of your 80th birthday, so you can say, right, 80 years. I spent 20 years probably studying and wasting time, but then I also spent another 20, 30 years doing this and that. And this is my contribution, my net contribution to life. That's something that I keep thinking about in terms of what would help, in terms of what is my life's message. I hope that's not too philosophical.
Not at all. You're singing the tune to my favorite song. It's really helping young people to spend time getting to know themselves, I think, is what I'm hearing you say. But would you not agree that that comes with life and life experience and probably education? In your degrees, you would have had to be reflexive. You would have had to really look inward to understand what you want to be bringing outward. And do you feel that young people on their journey are so focused on getting a job that they're not spending enough time learning more about who they are and what potentially is that contribution they want to be making to society?
I agree, but I also can't blame them. It's the nature of societal pressures that forces people to think in boxes. So what kind of job do you have? What kind of job did your peers have? What are you single? Are you married? Do you have this? Do you have that? Did you holiday somewhere? Did you contribute this? So if one of your peers comes out and say, I wrote a book, then you start thinking, maybe I should have done that. How hard is that to do? Maybe, and then you start writing that book. And then you're thinking about it. Okay, it takes 2 years and whatnot. I haven't been able to finish it. I'm just sick and tired of it. Maybe it's not my thing, and then starting something else. So our society forces us to think in boxes in terms of what it is that we can achieve. If everybody around you says a job, then you would have to think about that job. But if then you're thinking outside the box and they say, oh, okay, so you thought this was a good idea, establishing your own business. Now here you are 2 years later, you wasted 2 years and you're unable to pay your bills and you have all the other stresses. So I can't really blame young people. I just say you just have to be stronger than society around you. And if you think something is right, go with your gut feeling, just pursue it, go for it. It doesn't have to be at the expense of your own well-being. You still need to pay your bills, for example, but you need to keep it in there somewhere, has enough space just to move forward and keep advancing. And that's how people contribute to society. That's how they find their place in life. That's how they answer the key questions about why am I here and what am I trying to do.
Okay, let's go into your current role. Tell us a little bit about the three functions that you stated. You said you support the UN UAE cooperation for sustainable development, substantive servicing and analysis to inform policymaking, and you facilitate multi-country diplomatic engagement. What does that mean? Let's break it down for a young person.
So the United Nations is an intergovernmental body. The idea behind the United Nations is that how can we solve the world's problems? So the world's problems can be problems of peace and security in relation to after the Second World War. How can we create a mechanism to peacefully resolve disputes? Obviously, sometimes it's more successful than the others, but that is the mechanism. That's why we have the Security Council, and that's why we have the different instruments of the United Nations. So in that kind of context, we need to have a conversation. Now, servicing that kind of conversation requires a lot of engagement on the ground within countries' capitals, with policymakers, with influentials, and with stakeholders, people who are affected by issues. One ongoing conversation that we're having about the big world problem is the issue of climate change, and how can we address that issue? We are in a warming climate. If you have skin, you would see how hot it gets in the summer. So therefore, what can we do about that? What can we do about that to protect ourselves, to protect our planet, to protect our living beings around us? Because we get to go in air conditioning, but what about all the natural habitat? What happens to people who don't have air conditioning? So having that kind of a global conversation is important. Our role is in relation to facilitating contributions from the UN system, and the UN system secretariat reflects 193 countries' opinions around that, to the UAE and from the UAE to feed into that kind of mechanism. And to different types of conversations. For example, if you will talk about how does the UAE improve its position in food security? We want to have food flown into us and available in our supermarkets. We want it to be of good quality. We want it to be affordable. And we want to make sure that it's there when we need it the most, if there is any crisis or any kind of situation. So how can we work around that issue? So you have that conversation with the countries which produce and export that food. You have that kind of conversation with UAE policymakers responsible for making sure that it actually comes in. You have to have a conversation with many stakeholders in terms of what does that diet look like. So if I suddenly introduce a different diet than what we're used to in the UAE, then you say, okay, so yes, you're bringing me the wrong kind of food. So that's the kind of conversation that we engage on as one of the key functions, as one of the three key functions. The second functions revolve also around the same areas of work, talking more about what specifically can the UAE contribute to that global dialogue and how can the UAE support. And the UAE is an important leader in a number of areas, and we want to maximize that. One key issue that we're working on is nudging the UAE from being a rule taker, in which those are the international norms and standards, to becoming a norm setter, so that they say, this is better a way of doing things. This is a more efficient way of doing things. And that's one key part of my role.
Amazing. Incredibly interesting. I'm thinking, I have my career hat on my head, and I'm thinking these roles are obviously opening up opportunities that young people should be focusing on for their future employment. If you could pick out some of the things that young people should pick up from the roles, these conversations that you're having, where do you think that they should be thinking about if they're looking for employment, especially here in the UAE?
So there are three things to think about. The first thing is that think about the world's problems, say in 2030 or 2050, or whenever you feel that you'll have a lot of value-added contributions. Not the year when you graduate, the year when you already have graduated and already have at least 10 years of experience. Think about the world in that time and have like a visioning or a futuristic thinking exercise. So what would it look like? Are we likely to have more trouble? Are we likely to have a lot of conflicts? If you feel that way, and you have reason to feel that way, then chances are we would need more lawyers, we would need more rule of law experts, we would need more security expertise, digital security, like the digital security protection, whatnot. So if you feel that is the way the world, you see the world in that time, then that's where you build yourself. If you feel that there are some topics like inclusion, equality, acceptance of the other, tolerance, interfaith dialogue, international solidarity of that nature, then that is something that you want to invest in. It's up to you to decide if what fits more for you, because the world will have all the continuation of the current challenges that we face and more. There will be technology-based solutions, for example. If you feel that artificial intelligence is the answer to most of our questions, then pursue it. Have a closer look. Come to a position where you're able to either confirm, yes, artificial intelligence is the answer, so we don't have to think for ourselves anymore, which is the wrong way of thinking about it. Or no, it's not actually. It will create even more problems, and we need to have an international governance mechanism. So how can we deal with the development of artificial intelligence to make sure that it's for good, not for bad? Like, for example, there is a lot of discussion on autonomous killer robots and drones. There was actually a meeting of the Security Council talking about the impact of drones, especially in the wrong hands. So you have to make a decision on what do you feel in your exposure, based on your opinion, based on your knowledge, what will be a priority issue for the world, and then you will find a way to carve yourself a space within it. You can't say, and I would want to refute that, if I study to become a lawyer, and then if I focus on human rights, then I will end up having a job and a career later on. You have to be a lot more specific, and you have to have value in your degree. It's not getting a degree to get the A. It's the degree to solve a problem. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve in 2030 or 2050 or whenever that time is appropriate for you?
That is exactly what I am always trying to tell young people, that if they can find a problem that exists in the world, that they want to be part of that solution, that they'll be able to feel more connected to the work that they do and also stay more motivated on that work. But we know that it takes time. As we said, in looking at your journey when you were younger, it really is about evolving and gaining self-actualization and really understanding who you are, what you stand for, and that might take some time. Let's look at some of your top tips. Continuous learning. We can definitely see on your path that there was always continuous learning. But I know from your story that you weren't just learning in a lecture hall, you were learning along that journey. Where else do you believe that young people can gain life learning that doesn't happen in a lecture hall?
In conversations. I would say, for example, I would actually argue against schooling. I think schooling limits your learning because it forces you to think in specific boxes and then limits you to that. And then you get the sense that, okay, I've learned all this algebra or I've learned all this geography. But then that limits your thinking. I think conversations with experts, with people, just go out there, attend events, go on YouTube, look at conference on whatever topic that you'd like. And you will find a lot of those. So just hear what people have to say, have these conversations, and try to be more receptive of what are the different and contradictory ideas. For example, I follow all the annoying people on Facebook, on people I do not agree with, so that I know what the other opinions are. And that's how the Facebook algorithm works, so that if you like something or you see something a lot, then it keeps feeding you more of the same. So that I know what are people who I disagree with opinions, and I do the opposite on Twitter. So I follow accounts of ideas where I want to develop my expertise, so that I want to see what is the conversation about, what is the vibe about, what are some of the insights from experts. For example, if we say satellite telecommunications is going to enable our schooling, and then you ask the question, okay, how does that work? Satellite schooling, okay, so there's a connectivity element, there is an access. Then you think about it, you say those who have tablets and good connections and are able to stream all this material are able to get that kind of schooling and improve their grades. Those who don't, can't, because the whole educational system was designed in such a way to benefit those who have access to it and disadvantage others who do not have. So, okay, so what kind of solution can you look at other and how can we manage it in that sense. So that's one key area in terms of continuous learning and education. It's up to you to pursue, and it's up to you to see what kind of conversations matter the most. So if you spend 3 hours on YouTube, how are you going to spend those hours? Are you going to be listening to speeches, lectures, seminars, conferences, discussions, dialogues, or are you going to be watching video clips and TikTok snippets and whatever?
Very interesting. And learning from these conversations also, I think, helps with a student to see and think, wow, that really is different to my perspective, and that is something that I might not have thought about, and maybe open up their mindset. You also say don't shy away from pursuing opportunities. What does that mean, don't shy away from them?
If you happen to come across an idea to do something or participate or be somewhere, go for it. Unless you have somewhere more important at the same time, go for it. I mean, you will learn something strange, something new, something interesting. You will get to meet somebody, and you'll have all sorts of opportunities. I think the UAE community is particularly lucky because it's like a miniature world, because you have a variety of engagements and a variety of people from backgrounds that can be quite different than yours. So having that kind of conversations and understanding more about it, just go for it.
Dr. AlSaqqaf, as I'm listening to you today, and I'm hearing your journey, and I'm listening to everything that you came across, I'm thinking, who was your role model that taught you perseverance, that taught you to take opportunities? Or was it just life experience that you sat down and said, what's next?
I don't have a specific role model. It depends on what stage of life you're in. For example, the first opening in terms of geology, it was actually that TV presenter, Mustafa Mahmoud, the late Mustafa Mahmoud. But then going a little bit beyond that, then learning about different authors and but this is what Bill Gates contributed, this with that. So it's a moving target. And nobody is perfect. Should be your lifelong ideal. I've come across a lot of influential people who had a lot to say in terms of policymakers, leaders, and spiritual leaders as well, and other people. And I always think about it, that is a good point coming from that person, but then I move on to the other persons. You have to have something within you that keeps pulling you forward. And that could be an interest in someone else's ideas, or it could be an interest in someone else's character, but it should always help you go beyond that person. Because if we start idealizing or thinking that this is my role model, then we don't see their limitations, and we don't see how we can outgrow what they can be or what they have become.
If a young person is listening to this right now and thinking about everything that you've shared and looking to you as a role model, what do you want them to remember?
Keep going at it, keep pursuing. You have to be your own role model, and you have to be your own. You have to find the pursuit of what it is that you want to do on your own. You can benefit from my story and my experience, and my story is one that's still being written. And you can look beyond me. I asked my son, for example, who is your role model? He told me about a YouTuber called Markiplier, or a gamer or something like that. So I Googled that person. I saw some of the interesting simulations or whatnot, and I'm trying to see, okay, so that person does something quite interesting. I'm definitely not my son's role model, but my son finds something in that person. So maybe there is something I can find in my own son's role model. So Markiplier, I'm interested in your work, and I'm learning more about what you do. I'm not sure I understand it, but at least I am paying attention. So that's the key issue. I think we can look beyond the static role model to thinking more about a dynamic persons who are able to contribute some things, or you can be your own role model in the sense, this is what I want to see myself in the future. By 2030, by 2050, I would have authored this book, I would have done this, I would have done that, I would have had 3 million hits on my YouTube while I was playing video games because I'm so awesome at this.
I could keep going and ask you, you're such an incredibly interesting person to learn from. But as we're coming to an end, where do you see yourself evolving into as your story continues to unfold?
I see multiple trajectories. One thing which I think is about meriting myself in terms of the contributions I make. It's very comfortable to be the United Nations economist in the UAE. I don't see myself be comfortable down the line. I have to be in locations and opportunities where I can be more useful to people and more useful to society and able to deliver on where I'm needed the most. I see myself reflecting on I see myself as a global citizen who was able to contribute to multiple development conversations around the world and also helping advance the forward. I won't invent a number. I won't come up with a new equation or a whole new theory, but at least I will make a dent in many people's lives. That's what I see myself down the line. I hope I succeed.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your career journey and your insights, telling us the stories of how you became Dr. Raidan AlSaqqaf. It has been an incredible pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you to your audience, and I hope this was useful.
It was brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This brings us right to the end. We were speaking with Dr. Raidan AlSaqqaf, who is the United Nations resident economist for the United Arab Emirates. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you at our next Let's Talk Careers with Miss V.